Welcome to the Spiritual, Sexual, Shamanic Podcast. What even is that? We'll find out. Stay tuned. Today, I am really fucking excited in a really different way. It's not like neurotic mania high excitement, but it's like rooted deep. Yeah, homie, familiar. Like, you know, you my people. I'm here with Dave Booda.
Center of the earth and excitement, you know.
It feels like my my balls are hanging, like they dropped, you know? Yeah.
Big old balls.
Big old balls.
That's right.
All right. So for those of you who don't know who the Dave Booda is, I've got a little bio.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's go for it. Yep. You smell great, like a man.
I said bio, so I thought.
I know.
Yeah, that was a joke.
Yeah. Bio. Dave Booda is a writer, musician, and social entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of Intimacy Fest and hosts the Darkness Experiment. Dun, dun, dun.
Darkness.
That's right. The Darkness Experiment. He has led over 400 workshops on connection, touch, and relationships, and has consulted for and facilitated experiences for companies, communities, retreats, festivals, conferences, men's groups, birthday parties, orgies, weddings, funerals, and gatherings of all kinds. Literally all of them. with the intention to inspire authenticity, depth, group cohesion, and connection. He has published over 200 essays for Buddhism.com and played over 1,000 shows as a touring singer/songwriter.
Yeah, that's the adult version of my bio where it talks about the orgies.
This is impressive shit. I'm into it.
yeah, I sent it to you. Yeah, now yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm old. You know, that means I've been around. I'm not that old, but you know.
Or how about we call it older?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm older.
Older. Yeah. You've lived.
I've lived some.
You've
less
lived
than others,
some.
more than some. Yeah.
It's a good way to put it.
I'm really happy to be here, Ria, and I want to say that this is really fun, and I'm sure we'll talk about why, but I feel like since you referenced your balls, like you really like this move to have me a part of this is very big balls.
I got big balls.
I love that. I'm telling some friends, you know, like, oh my God, I'm going to go hang out with Ria and we're going to talk on our podcast. And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? And I just thought, yeah, I wouldn't even thought to do that. So bravo for your big old balls.
Bravo indeed. You know, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And so much to be said, but ultimately what motivates me the most and what I love doing is looking for aliveness. Like what's alive, what's raw, what's edgy, where's their juice? Like where's their life force? Like, right? Like I'm trying to convey a specific message using all these like words that are fancy, but like it feels real and it feels alive. It just feels really current. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, when we talked about what we're going to talk about, I really don't know. I mean, it's basically like we kind of landed on, yeah, we can talk about all the different things, but ultimately, I want to look for what's alive. And I trust that you and I have this like brohood, like we're friends, you know?
We've known each other for a while.
It's been a decade.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
I met you at the hotel that I'm going to be hosting an event at this weekend.
Oh my God, it's our anniversary.
Yeah.
It is. And that was October. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little more about like why did you invite me?
Yes.
But I want to give maybe some context for why one would ask that, or why my friends would be like, really? You're going on that podcast? That's weird. So it's September 2023 right now, and probably for the last year and a half, but maybe a year officially, I've been part of a group called 3SC, Safer Sex Positive Spiritual Communities. I think we're still getting our name right. And we're basically a group of friends who saw an opportunity to try and correct some things in that field, which mostly we're talking about ISTA, and this is an ISTA podcast. And so I've been publicly and privately very critical of a lot of things ISTA, personnel, systems, that kind of thing. I like to think I'm a reasonable and generative force, right? I'm not trying to just throw bricks through windows, but like I've said some things that have upset some people. I've been uninvited to some dinner parties where there's ISTA people or something. And yet, of course, I have a lot of friendships like you and so many others with friends that are they're teachers or participants or organizers with ISTA. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing other things in the last year, but that's a big thing that I've been doing, is spend a lot of time in some really sweet mediated conversations with a bunch of ISTA, the names change a lot, but like council or governance or different kinds of people that are involved in decision making. And yeah, so I've been kind of the bad guy in a lot of people's minds. And that doesn't usually get you invited on podcasts. Not that I was trying to get invited on a podcast, but that's some context for why this is like a bold move by Ria. So I'm curious, aside from just the kind of the fact that it's out on left field, which is just already a fun reason to do things, like tell me more about your thoughts and why you invited me, and I'm sure you didn't get like rousing approval applause from other people when you were like, I want to invite Dave, and they're like, so yeah, assuming this airs, which we don't know if it will, but assuming that's the case, like tell me about your decision process.
I love this. I love that I'm getting asked the questions on like the podcast. It's like already new, right? Not only are we doing it live in person, in amazing San Diego, which is paradise where we live. And it's an amazing question. It's because really it boils down to, I love you. Like, I adore you. You've been a dear, dear friend and someone I've called my community, and I've always felt close to you, and I just fucking adore you. And we have history, 10 years worth, and I wouldn't have met my husband if it weren't for you.
Yeah.
And you've brought so much joy and laughter and awesomeness in my life. And we have this amazing bond. And simultaneously, I love ISTA. Mm-hmm. I grew up with ISTA. ISTA has provided so much healing and transformation for me. It's also provided a lot of community. Mm-hmm. So I'm in this unique position of, two loves, essentially, that I feel connected to and close to and parallel with, that are at odds with each other. Or I don't even know if that's the right term, but it's like, it's not the same connection, right?
Yeah. Not everybody
we're in a V
about us the way you do.
Exactly. We're in a V dynamic, and I'm the hinge, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I also know there are no such thing as the bad guy, the good guy. Like, whenever there's that level of black and white thinking or clear delineation and like some kind of line, really, it's so fucking arbitrary and subjective. And I'm interested personally in having nuanced, dynamic, layered conversations, because I trust that the truth will reveal itself. Like, the truth will whisper, and it'll come through in the whisper, and those who can hear it will hear it and understand it, right? Or the truth can also be a 2x4 and hit you over the head with it and kind of clunk you into reality check land. And also, it's not so much like this objective truth that exists outside, but really it's about lessening distortion. I honestly don't think I will ever experience reality or life without distortion. I am constantly living under my own subjective projections and stories.
Reality.
Reality. That's right.
To those cute comics. They're so cute.
Exactly.
And I love that. The acknowledgement of that is deep.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, of course. Like, it's almost like a bridge. Like, it's like, there's all these rumors or hearsay or like social media. It's just a limited platform. not that like a podcast episode is the totality of it, but we can actually have a real just conversation, like two humans that we are.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to say when you just opened that up and said, because I love you, I was moved. I had tears in my eyes. It was really sweet.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Thank you.
Thanks for
I
that.
love you, bro.
I think we've always had a special, like, you've always felt like family to me,
Yeah.
you know, like pretty much since, you know, shortly after we met and got to know each other. Like there was just this like no boundaries family kind of vibes, you know? And I think maybe, I don't know, I feel like I have that a lot. I had that growing up on the East Coast, and I had that when I was in the Navy and at the Naval Academy a lot. So that, like, I sometimes take it for granted, but it is rare somewhat out here. You know, there's not a lot of people that I get to drop in like that with, and it's so easy, you know, but I think it feels like family to me, you know?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't make me cry again. That's it. Okay. I'm done with that shit.
I want the waterworks. I want all of you. I want the squishy and the puddle, because I know and have felt and have seen that side of you.
Yeah.
Right? We can laugh, we can joke, we can talk about balls, and we can also bring on the tears, bring on the softer side and the velvet side of our inner chambers of our heart. And this dynamic, you know, from humor to speaking about reality and what is the meaning of life, it's a whole range that I don't get to share with many people. And you're definitely among the top.
Yeah.
That I really enjoy having that dynamicism with. So it's like, oh my God, of course I would invite you to the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yay.
Yeah.
To an episode we have no idea what to name or call yet, because we're just flowing with what's alive. And, you know, again, it's like our history, the way we met was through like a intentional workshop space, like personal development work, talking about polyamory, open relationships with some of the pioneers in the field. This was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we've been sort of like orbiting and involved and have experienced and also like stood on the shoulders of a lot of giants in the space. Yeah. And we've also sort of been like passed down this baton or torch that we both carry in different ways. Like we have different versions of it and iterations of it, which I love to like talk more about.
I keep thinking I was trying to make a joke about like passing the dildo or like
oh yes,
standing on the genitals of or something, but I couldn't. It just nothing really came. It was.
I like the visual though. The torch that we're carrying is clearly a dildo. Yeah, clearly with like, you know, flames inside. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Flaming dildo.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's very natural and apropos. Yeah. So, you know, it's like, you know, I feel my relationship with ISTA has been, I'm part of the ISTA core. I'm an ISTA faculty member, facilitator. I've brought ISTA to Japan, to my fatherland. I mean, I've started this podcast. I'm also running the ISTA integration program. I am balls deep in ISTA, you know?
Big old balls deep.
You know, and I've never personally experienced your judgment or criticism. I've only experienced your reverence and respect for me, because I feel your trust and your love and your care for me. And you're like, hey, Ria, if you want to do that, great, good for you. And, you know, like you've expressed to me, if you have any issue or judgment or concern, it's like you take ownership of it, right? Like you're not putting it on me. Like it doesn't feel, I don't feel attacked, right? And so we've never had that, I don't know, friction or conflict or anything. If anything, it's like, my experience of you and your relationship to ISTA is you're like, you know, perpendicular to ISTA.
As opposed to, like running alongside and like the car running the red light through the intersection or something.
That's right.
And T-boning.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, because I am excited about making this podcast as much about you as we can. I mean, you don't take yourself that seriously. And is one of the things that's really wonderful about you. And it's easy to take yourself seriously when you're a shaman or whatever people are. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, and I don't take myself that seriously either. And I don't take other people that seriously for the most part, which I guess can be hard. But yeah, like that's a big piece. Like, I think there's, I try to learn everything I can from the masterclass ads on Facebook. That's mostly where I get my wisdom from. So I will repeat something from an advertisement that I thought was really profound, which is from this guy, Jocko Willink, who's a ex-Navy SEAL and, has been on Rogan a bunch and has just kind of made a lot of people smarter, and he's wonderful. He did a class on leadership, and I watched the masterclass ad for it, of course. So I've seen the entire thing. And he had this line, and he said, here's the top 3 qualities of a leader: humility, humility, humility. That was it. And I also my understanding of leadership is very rooted in the military, so I appreciate what he's saying. And I've been thinking about that lately, as I've talked to a lot of leaders in the sacred sexuality community, including myself in the mirror and other people. And it's like, how humble are people? Just a humble spiritual leader is a rare find.
Yeah. And
yet both leadership and spirituality kind of asks for humility. I mean, and so I think it's easy to overlook that because it's a very subtle, nobody gets awards for being humble. Yeah. You don't really see that. And yet it's just such an important quality to have, to be an influencer, a leader, facilitator, whatever it is that we find ourselves doing, And so I just wanted to add that and say, you don't have to purchase the masterclass anymore. You could just, that's it. You got it. Thanks, Jocko.
You've saved us. Thank you, our hero. Yeah. It's so powerful. Humility. Having been born and raised in Japan, I have a different relationship with humility than I experience a lot of people in the West or just Americas, really. And just being, multiracial and living all over the world and traveling and just being influenced and touched by so many cultures, there are, what I'm tracking and noticing is a distinction between like human instinct, like the human condition that no matter what culture you're from, we're all subjected to. And then there's like cultural differences between like collectivist culture versus individualistic culture. And something that I appreciate about Japanese culture, by no means is it perfect, but it does really honor humility. It honors honor. Totally. Like honor's a big thing. There's a saying in Japanese to read the air, kuki o yomu. Like you read the air, like you feel the energy, right? And like silence is powerful. They appreciate stoicism there, right? It's like a different culture and reward. And the full other side of the spectrum here on this side of the world, it celebrates like ambition and goal oriented and like achievement,
individualism. For sure.
Not that achievement's not celebrated there because it has more Western influences, but just
like individual
rooted.
Achievement. Maybe in a sense or something. Yeah. Or status, maybe in that way. Maybe it's a better word for it. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Status is a human condition.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter what culture you're from. Sure. We are all after status.
Right.
Like, seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, literally everything I ever do is for status.
Yeah.
Why would it not be? Why would I ever be motivated to do anything else? But it's not status at the expense of my humanity, right? Like I'm still very much about having compassion, looking for love, like looking for the truth. Like there's a sense of being grounded in it, but status as in instinct, human instinct, right? That it's like an unconscious program and motivator that unless I'm actively thinking about and feeling into, that program is running me.
Yeah. I want to say another thing that you're really good at that I appreciate, is, which kind of goes back to what you were saying about how you know what you don't know.
Yeah.
this idea that like your reality is not the reality.
Nope.
Which sounds obvious. It sounds like we all should just get that, but you look around and it's not the case.
Right.
And yeah, like you're really like you are not, I mean, I think it's partly because you don't take yourself so seriously, but you don't, you're just like, you've made friends with the parts of you that are, you know, I don't know what best I would put, these kind of like classic human parts, right? That like no one should really be ashamed of. Like we're all questing for status. We're all like, you know, the ego in that way.
Yeah.
Like that's just what it is. Like it's not, and it's just for most part okay with you. And that's great. I think that's so important.
And this takes work. Like I wasn't born like this. I was under the spell and insecure, and I still have them, and I still battle with all the things that humans have. But there's a part of me that really loves just the sharp angle truth. And the truth can be brutal. But there's something so fucking liberating about it. That's like, you know what? Here's the catch-22 bitter truth cosmic joke of it all, right? Literally every single human being, if you're alive and you're in a body, you're going to have insecurities and you're going to have thoughts, and it's going to be dysphoric and uncomfortable. There's just like suffering and battles that we're all facing and going through. And it's like, you know what? If we're all doing this, but then we're struggling because we're trying to cover it up and pretend like we're not, it's like, what? It just makes no sense. It just burns way too many calories to like have so many layers and masks between what's authentic and what's real. And actually, I figured out the secret sauce, which is you will never be bored getting to know yourself. Just like learning about myself. Like, I don't know who the fuck I am. I don't know what's real and what's not real. I have an inkling. I have a notion. Like I'm trying to constantly shift my needle and my compass, you know, to align with something deeper and bigger than just myself.
I want to sort of pause that and point to something that's just because we exist in a lot of spiritual communities and something like that. I think when you say you'll never get bored with learning about yourself, I think people hear it in different ways. And I think one of the ways that people hear it that you don't mean, that I also don't mean, is like essentially learning how to be better. In a sense, being more self-aware and congruent with who you are. You could make the argument that's a better version of yourself. So I get that. But I think there's a way that at one times in a lot of spiritual communities, what they'll do is like, I'm learning about my divine self. I'm learning about myself as a spiritual being. I'm learning more about myself, but it's learning about who they want to be. It's not like, that's different. Learning about like, okay, I have this model of myself. Let's just say it, you know, we've talked about this before, but men do this all the time. Men love this. And like, what does it mean to be a man? I'm learning about myself as a man. Well, what's probably happening is that I have a model of what it means to be a man. I think that's what I need to be. And I'm learning how to be that, or I'm trying to acquire the skills to be that, which is just different than what you're saying. I'm not saying one should or shouldn't do that. That's kind of a different topic, but it's like learning about yourself and being curious about yourself. It's a particular energy that I think sounds obvious, but often in the execution of it is not the thing you're saying.
Yeah. There is
maybe because you have to do it with no judgment, I think, and that's again comes back to where your approach is. You can approach that with no judgment. A lot of people can't. They're learning about themselves. Like, oh, but that thing, nope, we're going to fix that. Okay, let me write that down, fix that thing. You know, and it's like, but if you can actually look at yourself with no judgment, then you have a shot at learning about who you actually are. Period. You know?
It's uncomfortable. It's painful, quite frankly, because there's something around human instinct, human animal, being primal creatures that most people struggle with accepting that we're an animal species. We're animals. Like, right? If we're so stuck on pretending to be civilized or, you know, especially conscious or woke, or there's like some kind of idealized way of being versus looking at myself as a spectrum. I'm constantly evolving, constantly moving, constantly changing, and coming back to like, what do I value? What are my principles? And also being able to find where I can actually, I like the word you use, be congruent, like integrated, because so often there's just like internal conflicts. There's a part of me that wants one thing and another part that wants something totally opposite, and it's not mutually exclusive. And then I go into like war with myself, or there's like suffering or struggle or pain. It's like, what's the point of that? So part of that, you know, my origin story, right? Like where it all started is just being American and being Japanese, like being Buddhist and being Jewish, like being born and raised in Tokyo, Japan, and growing up in Kawasaki, Japan, like who I am as a Japanese little girl to young woman. Like when I speak Japanese, like my personality is different. Like I have a different personality in Japan, but not just being Japanese, being also like a half person, like multiracial in a homogenous society. Moving to the States, like being American, who am I? Like growing up in New York and Jersey, like, right? You're Boston, right? Like we've got the Northeast. It's a vibe. Like it's a fucking vibe. Like, you know, if you know, you know.
Yeah, that's where we threw our first play party together.
Exactly.
In Brooklyn.
That's right. Brooklyn, New York, you know? I run into Dave at Poly Cocktails. And I'm like, you come home with me now.
That was, well, I should tell that story.
Okay, please,
that was really great.
By all means.
And I think, and then we threw the play party afterwards or something like that, like a couple months later. Yeah, I showed up to a Poly Cocktails event, and I was in my high school brain, you know, feeling like super insecure. And I was like, oh, who I'm going to hope maybe I'll meet someone here and maybe people and just make some friends, or I don't know, whatever. And maybe there was more going on that day. It was just like, I was just not in a good headspace. And I just ran into you. Had we slept together before at that point? Maybe
no, we hadn't yet at that point.
Yeah, we hadn't. So I was just like, oh, here's this awesome person that I know, and great. And then you were like, you're like, oh my god, hey, it's good to see you. Blah blah. It's just like, what are you doing tonight? Let's go back to my place and have sex or something. I mean, I forget what you said, but it was just like
pretty much.
It was just like a wave that just like washed my brain of all the bullshit that was going on inside, and it was just like, it was just such a sweet, and again, it was just like to me, like that family, that friendship model that we're talking about. It was like this, just so that's I think that's how it started. That's how we got to really know each other, maybe, or then we threw the play party a couple months later, and that's where you met Kenny, and yeah. And
when we say friendship and family, it's friends and family who sleep together and are intimate. It's a different category.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is where language fails us, right? Like we're trying to communicate very specific experiences or nuanced feelings and insights and thoughts, and we use these words, but I can tell that they're really like double entendres, and like people just hear what they hear. And it's like, it's so challenging to share reality. But then when you do share it with someone, you're like, you get it. Like you're here with me. Like we're on the same, you know, we're in the similar bubble. Like we're smelling the same things. We're seeing the same things. Like, special.
I mean, it's just like a Madonna whore complex. Spread out over everything, you know. It's like, how can you be both?
Right.
And how can you be both if you're not like that's what marriage is or something, or that's what a long-term relationship is, or all these other things. So
But I love that. I love this story. That's so appropriate. Like I have worked so hard to be that person, to be like, why are we fucking playing games? Right. Like just speak it, you know?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love a good mystery, and I love a good, like, you know, anticipation and foreplay, and like I understand seduction, the art of seduction. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about falsifying insecurities and like withholding
Playing games.
Yeah.
Playing games.
Like
Yeah.
cat and mouse. Like, do you like me? Do you not like me? But I'm never going to ask you directly. And
Right.
it's weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And it's beautiful. And that you have the power to change that. I mean, I think that's, attractive women generally, I think, have a nice leverage to change that.
I've got all the power.
I do what I can, but also like I have to just kind of tread cautiously around directness when it comes to different things like that. One of the things I do, my kind of day job is I play music at bars and restaurants and stuff like that. And I do that like 3 or 4 days a week. And a lot of times I'm connecting with cute women, it's kind of eye contact and I can see them watching me play and sing and they like it. And I just think to myself, like, wouldn't it just be nice if we lived in a world where like on my break, she could come up to me or I could come up to her or something and be like, you're super hot. You want to make out for like 2 minutes? And I'm like, yeah. Like, wouldn't that just, it's like, and we don't, and that's okay. And whatever. And I think that's, you and I and ISTA and all sorts of organizations are working to try to help create that world, not smack society over the head with that world, but like usher that world in gently, but it's a bummer, it's like, yeah. And not that every sexual desire needs to be actualized. It's very male of me, but it's like, it's such a bummer. Like, this is a win-win here. Look at all the win-wins. It's like when we all like think back to high school and realize that the person we had a crush on and a crush on us too. And it's just like, shoot, what do you do with that? So,
yeah. I don't know about you, but I definitely live in that world.
I know you do. No, I'm saying it's beautiful. And I think the way I, try to live in that world is through community, is through like, I don't necessarily feel like I can do that with strangers, but I can do that and I can have people around me that, that we trust each other and that's nice, but it's beautiful. I mean, it's great. You know?
It's so funny. Yesterday I went to my women's group. I had a women's group gathering and we rotate, to different people's houses every time we gather. And I'm in a new building for one of my sisters, going to her house, and I'm walking down the hallway and there's a door open and there's just like a bunch of dudes in there who's like, just chatting. And I'm like, hey, is this my party? Just like, I'm just like flirting. I don't know you. You're some random stranger in like the building of an event I'm going to go to. Like, hey, is this my party? And he just kind of looks at me shocked. He's like, no. And I was like, okay, have a good night. Like
it was going to be my party, but now it's not. Peace out.
But like, it's like, I live in the world of embracing and owning my desire, my sexuality as much as I can, because I feel like salmon swimming upstream, right? Like I'm living in a culture that is sex negative, that has a lot of opinions and judgments and like a lot of shit to say about sexuality in general, especially female sexuality. So doing the work to just really find a home in my skin, in my body, like really landing in this animal body and being like, yeah, let's take full advantage of this, animal body experience because it's so fleeting. And I live in that world of like, hey, I speak into my desires, I own it, but I'm also calibrated and like finding synergy, right? So like random stranger door open, like, yeah, I threw some, I don't know, bait your way, like just to, be cheeky. Like, what's the point of life, right? If you can't kind of do that. And I was met with the no, and it's like, great, have a good night. Like, we'll never see each other again. But, it's like, so I'm seeing where people meet me.
Well, it's like you were met with confusion.
Yeah.
Because if that guy knew what you were actually doing and he understood that there was a reality where you were actually just that open, then he might have reacted differently. But it's kind of like if somebody just like walks up to you in the middle of the street and says, hey, here's $100 bill. You'd be like, thanks. Okay. And you're like, look, you're like,
Right.
what's the catch?
Right.
Right. And a lot of times women like you do that. And then that's the reaction. It's like, hey, what's the catch here?
Yeah.
What are you expecting in return for this your sexuality? This flirtiness or whatever it is, you know? And last week he got burned. So he's like, no, not going to take that risk again.
Right. Totally.
Or whatever, you know? And fortunately, you know, I mean, I guess like, so you can share that reality with people and then, you know, whatever. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And like, you know, I can maybe share that reality to the extent I can, but I have ears for that. Like I have like this naive optimism every time I go on like dating apps or something, that people could just be honest and have an exchange of needs of what they actually want, which most of the time I'm guessing is not finding the one, you know, like I'm just like, I mean, it just be like, like this could be so great. And yet, and I'm always naively optimistic. I'm always like, I'm just going to be honest here. I'm just going to and I'm like, so I, you know, and again, sometimes it comes back around and I'm pleasantly surprised, you know, I'm like, oh my God, I just met someone who's super cool and is just like this. And we got along great and we had a fun experience and we're both happy about it. Like wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. But you know, it's just a weird game playing world out there.
It's a game playing strategic world. And I feel lucky that I stumbled upon my people who get me.
Right.
Who enjoy my flavor of weirdo, right? Like who get my quirkiness and they're like, yeah, more of you. Because I've definitely been in spaces where that was not the case.
Yeah.
Right. Which led to a depression and eating disorder and just like being around not my people. Right.
What does that look like for people to kind of shoot you down in that way?
It's a great question. It could be as simple as just not playing with me. Like playing with my words, like I'm silly, I want to be witty, like I'll throw bait, you know, like a setup, you know, and I just want banter.
Yeah.
And if I'm just met with like a stone wall or like meh, you know, like that alone's like, oh, they just don't get me. Like they're not playing energetic catch with me.
For sure.
Right. You know, it's like, it's just as simple as that. Like, then I already know, oh, my flavor is not like celebrated here because I don't want to just be tolerated.
What's the shittier version of that though? Like what does that probably is less common, but like what is like the, because those people are just kind of idiots. Like they don't get it. Like the guy you walked up to, hey, is this my party? No. Correct answer. Move on. Thank you very much. I am a robot. Like those like, people are just dumb, but like there's some people that I'm guessing have been shitty to you.
Yes.
You know, and try to like kind of take advantage of that openness in a way to like either project their fucking shame or whatever. But like, what does that look like?
That's a good question. So I definitely think this way of being, like my openness is a part of my personality and just like constitution, if you will. And so when I was younger, definitely like teenage years to early 20s, I was taken advantage of. Like I've tripped and fallen accidentally into multiple cults, right? Just like different, you know, spiritual groups or practices or whatever. I mean, I've dated a ton of cult leaders. You know, my birth father, my father actively calls himself a cult leader.
Okay.
He's like a tiny little Japanese man who like meditates 14 hours a day.
Wow.
You know, and is like, oh, proud daughter. Only thing important in life is peaceful death.
Wow.
And I'm like, Daddy, I am 5 years old. Before I die, can I get like $5 to buy some candy? Like, that's what life is about. It's like death, you know?
Damn.
So, I mean, I grew up in a very spiritually led level of intensity, right? So I'm used to intensity. I'm used to abstract thinking and like far out there ways of being. Like to me, that's normal, right? Like that's what's familiar.
Yeah.
And this living day to day, like, you know, figuring out the daily mundane of life, like learning how to be human, like that's like exciting for me because it's so new.
Yeah.
So I've learned along the way. I've had many heartbreaks. I've fucking, you know, drained $30,000 out of my account, you know, with one of those heartbreak experiences, right?
Yeah.
Like,
What did you spend the money on?
oh, good.
I have to know. It's like just threw that out
Do you
there.
want the like crude answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, good dick. Just
Okay, great.
really good dick. It was
Wow.
just, I was like madly in love. I was 24. He was like,
So you're not talking about
36.
prostitution. But you spent the
No.
money on. You're saying like you supported someone.
oh my God,
who
yeah.
was hot.
Yeah, basically. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah.
We had amazing sex. I was 24. He was 36 or 7, like going through a divorce. And I was like, oh, just come move in with me.
Wow.
Yeah, of course. It's our second date and you're bringing like trash bags of your stuff. Yeah,
Great.
that's normal.
Yeah. Not even a bag of just trash.
Just like
bags. Yeah,
literally like hefty black garbage bags full of his stuff on the second date.
At least they were
Like,
thick plastic.
they were-
That's
yeah, it was
the
like-
extent. That's where the contractor bags. You know,
it's
it's good.
yeah, but like, I mean, now fast forward 14 years later, right? From that sweet, adorable, naive 24-year-old with googly eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've learned about codependency and, boundaries and consent and, principles and values. And I'm so glad I got to make really big life changing mistakes in my 20s.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew that, like I read it somewhere. We didn't have Instagram back then or Facebook back then, but I remember reading it somewhere like, beauty is wasted on the youth, or like youth is weighted on the youth. And like by the time you have intelligence and wisdom, you don't have your youth anymore. You don't have your vibrancy anymore.
Right.
So it's like, all right, I learned. And thank God, like knock on wood, I learned the hard way, but not so hard that I got lost in it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was able to bounce back. I had enough grit and perseverance to like literally blood, sweat, and tears crawl my way out of, default reality, like feeling disconnected and isolated, not feeling understood, not feeling seen, like just lacking depth.
Yeah.
And intimacy. And like, that's what I love about you is your willingness to play in the fun and light and witty and go towards deep.
You're trying to bring back to me, huh?
Yeah.
I see what you're doing there.
Yeah. Right. You like that? You like my ninja skills?
Yeah. No, I mean, I had probably a like kind of more of an opposite journey coming from like calibrating what it's like to have kind of cult leader narcissistic tendencies. I use the word narcissistic a lot and people freak out, but it's like, I just look at it as like a personality. I do think there are people with actual NPD that should be sitting on couches and talking to therapists, and that's great. And I don't think I'm one of them. However, looking at myself through the lens of a narcissist has helped me calibrate to just be a better person and listen more and stop interrupting people so much and all that kind of shit. But yeah, that's been like, so, I was the guy you were dating, 10 years ago or whatever. Like we were on journeys figuring out how to be in good relationships. Because I was, and again, I don't think it was horrible. But that was the thing that made it better when I could listen more and when I was, just more, I just said calibrated for those kinds of personality traits.
Yeah. It is so powerful to be able to listen well. And I mean, now that I'm here at like 39 years old, it's like, wow, I know nothing. I know nothing. I have fucked shit up and like rubbed my nose in it. I've gotten messy. I've like wrestled with it, and by it meaning like life and sexuality and love and heartbreak and pain and suffering, like all of it, like just the human experiences. I've really wrestled with this, and I'm a workshop junkie. Right? Like I've done all of it. I've done the Tony Robbins, the Landmark. I mean, I'm in fucking like balls deep in ISTA, right? And like psychedelics, Burning Man, like all the counterculture ways of transformation, of development, of exploring the corners of my psyche. I am still currently actively in psychoanalysis, like clinical, psychotherapy, with the same therapist for over 10 years.
Wow.
Like I am exploring the corners.
You're doing it.
I'm in it, right? Like I'm in the cobwebs of my psyche, right? Like just to and some of it's like navel gazing a little bit. And being able to rub my nose in that, I'm like, oh, now that I know what that is, it's like no longer interesting to me. Let me get my head out of my own ass, right? And like, what's even the meaning of life, right? And so it's constantly evolving and changing. So I feel deeply humbled, even like healthy embarrassment, right? Of like shit I've said or done in the past. But it goes to show like, oh, I'm shifting and changing, I'm morphing. And I am straddling that line of like, okay, I value growth without falling into paralysis and falling into like the ego trap and getting stuck because I'm so attached to certain status that I'm so afraid to lose status, I don't act. And I'm like, oh, that would be a living fucking hell, like a living nightmare.
Sure.
Right. So
I think that's, you do act a lot. You are out in the world. It was funny. I was going to joke when you were listing all the things you've done, and I was going to say, and Kenny.
Oh yes.
That's like, like your real, that's the real workshop, like you guys are really doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes it not navel gazing or whatever. Cause I do think personal growth often has diminishing returns.
Yeah.
It's like the first couple workshops, oh my God, it's great. And then it just kind of gets like less and less and less and less. And I think it's because it's, I don't know, you have to, I don't know, it just becomes like kind of skill building after a while, maybe.
Yeah.
And to really look at yourself, I don't know, you have to be willing to humble yourself so I mean, like what you're saying about acting, it really is, because it can be. I really feel like after, like if somebody's been in that work for 5+ years, just because the self-development world likes to tell you that everything you want is available through them. Just like any religion, or even maybe some therapists are like, just this is it. Like this is where you can learn anything because you've learned something. So you just, it's like keep going to that tree and picking fruit. You're going to keep eating fruit. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. I think we need that kind of diversity, and we need to like have different experiences. I mean, one of the most life-changing experiences I had was with Paolo, we went to South Africa and spent 2 weeks in the bush, and then worked with this woman named Anna Brettenbach, who's an animal communicator. And we lived out in this game reserve for 7 days with no tent, it was just wild animals and us, and a couple guys with rifles who were probably not going to use them.
Wow.
And it was like 7 of us, her and these 2 guides.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whew, that was life-changing. There was no wisdom or psychoanalysis or, distinctions or what, like, it was just like, that really changed me, or bicycling across Europe. In 2011, I cycled from London to Greece, through Turkey, over the Alps, all that kind of shit. And that was life-changing. And that was just, I don't even know where to start, but it was like, and I think there's a place for all that stuff, but
life is the greatest teacher, and nature is the greatest.
Nature's a really good teacher.
Nature, ecosexual AF, right? Nature really brings me back home to something beyond.
Nature needs to get a business coach, man. Nature could be making so much more money, Nature could be running retreats on a yacht in Croatia or something, It's just like, come on, nature. Like,
Come on, nature, get your shit
play
together.
a bigger game, all right?
Bigger
Like,
game.
stop playing so small. Like, don't you know your value?
Oh my
Like, don't you want to
God.
leave a legacy, nature? Come on.
So good.
Get a fucking coach, you know?
Get a
Jeez.
fucking coach. Yeah.
Just you're worth
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
nature.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
worth it.
Yeah, come on, nature. Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex.
Yeah,
Like,
just
come on.
ask your parents for a loan, whatever you need to do. Just get that money, nature. Get that coaching.
Yeah.
Start those programs.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, life will teach you. It's taught me. It's whipped my ass in shape, I tell you. And I appreciate it's both, right? Like, I mean, as a polyamorous woman, I can smell and sniff out like monogamous thinking, right? And belief systems, because it's just what we live in. So it's like the one, or like the answer, or the school, like the diet, the health, like this idea or notion that it's like this one thing and that's the all or nothing.
Oh, we're gonna blame all that on monogamy.
Well, it's not so much monogamy, but it's like mono thinking, mono theology, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
We can blame it on monogamy. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
It's a lot. No, I'm just kidding. We're not blaming it on monogamy. Monogamy's fine.
Monogamy's great. Monogamy is great. Like, so long as you thought it through.
Sure.
Like, we're born into it. It's all we know. It's what's acceptable. It's what's celebrated. It's what's supported. And if you're like, yeah, I've thought this through and this is what works for me, awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, that's great. For people who haven't thought it through, then it's like, oh, okay, you're just like, you're living in whatever was given to you and you haven't actually explored it. Like, good on you, but that's not what I'm interested in dabbling or playing with.
Yeah, we're talking about lacking diversity in your like life experience, such that you're too many eggs are in one basket.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed a lot is that, and this is the way I sum it up, is that people are often taking the wrong medicine. So like, since we're backing on Tony Robbins or something, if you go to a Tony Robbins workshop, most of the people there probably need nature or a meditation retreat or whatever. If you go to the meditation retreat, most of the people there might need Tony Robbins or might need a boxing gym. And you go to the boxing gym, most of the people there might need to just fucking, lay and not do anything. It's like we're all sort of like, we're doing things that for some people is growth and self-development, but for us might be just getting better at the thing we're already good at. And in doing that, we just avoid the weaknesses of ourselves. And we think that, and again, we're experiencing probably a little bit of growth, but it's this like plateau thing. But like, I mean, how many of our friends do we see and what they're doing is improving them? But it's like, yeah, but if you did that thing, and ISTA's a good example. I'm gonna throw ISTA in here. It's like, okay, so like working with your sexuality and your primal nature and all these things that I'm going to fail in characterizing ISTA about. But like, it's like, okay, that would be so good. But instead, this person is going to go to their 20th, marketing seminar or even, the too much into a meditation, heady, out of body experience thing. And it's like, how do you, man, like it's such a rare experience to go to something where I'm like, oh, I am out of place here. I am not, like, this is not, I'm not used to this. I'm not good at anything. Everybody here is, I'm like a rookie. Yeah. And it's so hard to find those experiences. But we're so in our bubbles and it's difficult. Yeah. I love Christian stuff.
Christian stuff.
When I find like Christian culture is so outside of my reality. It's like, oh man, there's some good things to be learned for me from that world. Yeah. To the extent I have access to it, and which is not much, but I try, It's a completely different world to me. And of course, I have a lot to offer them, but I'm not going in there preaching to them, I'm going in and like curious, like what I do need to be a little more responsible and like get my shit together and like, and you know what, like, like some morals, like, I think having a moral foundation and some other thing, there's gold there. There's gold there in them hills. I'm trying to, but it's just like, I wouldn't think to that. Well, if my first impulse, if I want to do more work, is to do something I'm already good at. Yeah.
Because we like feeling like we're winning.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean,
totally.
like it sends all the positive signals.
Yeah.
That it's hitting the different circuits and it's like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what we're wired to do. And I just am cut from a cloth of like, I need depth beyond just the status quo, just beyond the day-to-day, the default that's available. Like I'm seeking something deeper because my, I don't know, soul or essence or being or whoever the fuck, right, is inhabiting this body can't like sit still and like rest well. Right. So I've appreciated also frameworks and the way things are explained to me in a workshop setting, but it's only as good as me taking what I'm learning and applying it and living it, right? Like there's a difference of being like the observer or what you called earlier, like on the sidelines versus like being an active participant, like in my life.
Sure.
Yeah. And
that's what's great about relationships too. Relationships.
That I was going to say,
you can't do work on relationships from the sidelines. Like I don't know.
It does not work.
It's just great.
Yeah. My ultimate, like I'm getting a PhD right now in the school of Kenny, like you called it earlier. Like being married to him, it is really like I'm confronting aspects and parts of myself I wouldn't have access to without this relationship, without this marriage. Like 7 years in, we're hitting truths and honesty and bumping up in places that's like, okay, this is like edgy or crunchy, right? And in our love and in our relating and in humility, like literally every morning for breakfast, I need to eat some fucking humble pie or it is like a war zone.
Well, and I also say, looking at the differences between you and I as an example, I mean, that humble pie is definitely my medicine. And I think a lot of your medicine is also is actually like being bigger oftentimes. And like that's like taking up more space and having like been like, no, like this is, like that's, I think often where you come into more of alignment. It's not that you can't also be more humble. I think that's also true, but it's like, I mean, my medicine, again, looking through the lens of the kind of narcissism thing is about listening more and pulling back but for someone like my partner or you or other people, and not that we're all just one thing, but it can be about actually like stepping up and being bigger and being more like, no, you're gonna listen to me. Like this is like, I have something to say here. Again, if I give what often happens too is like, it's funny. I did this event with our friend Halcyon, John Halcyon, you know him? I thought it'd be fun to do an event called Narcissists Anonymous. And it was just like a little like group of us getting together. And I just love attention and all this kind of stuff. I just thought it'd be funny. And it was funny. And we did it and it was sweet. But like one of my friends who's totally not a narcissist, called me up or was like, hey, I want to come to that thing. And I was like, you're not a narcissist? No. I was like, no, you don't. But it was like, he's so afraid of that, that in his compensation for it, he's always guarding against being too big, taking up too much space. And then, but in his life, what he struggles with is that going too far that other direction, and so it's easy for us to look at, and I wrote a piece called "Why Narcissists Love Spiritual Communities," and the reason is because in spiritual communities, a lot of the same things that I'm saying to myself are kind of encouraged. It's like, you are God, like you are big, Marianne Williamson, like what we're really afraid of is not being powerful enough. And so people that are full of themselves, they hear that, they're like, that's a great message. I love that. Great message.
Yeah.
Fuck these Christian churches that are saying we should be humble and there before the grace of God go I don't need that shit. I'm going to go there and give me a cape, let's. And so it's like, it matches up with that, the thing that we already are saying to ourselves. Yeah. And then we take it because it's medicine for some people. So it's labeled, it's in a bottle called medicine. Yeah. And we take it and go, I'm taking medicine, everybody, look at me. I'm doing great. And it's like, no, man, you don't need to love yourself more. You love other people more. Yeah, stop fucking loving yourself. Like enough, and again, but for some people that's perfect medicine. And those people are probably over taking the more humble medicine. Oh, I need to be more humble. Oh, I'm taking too much space. And it's just like, no. Can you switch places? Yeah. Please switch places.
Yeah. We need to cross train each other.
Right.
And have a smorgasbord or like a buffet of different medicines, different flavors, different ways of existence, because you're right. We're going to just keep leaning into what feels familiar and what's easy. And so I feel lucky that I've stumbled upon this world, and it's only in my risk taking and like being high risk tolerant, and just taking chances, right? Of saying yes to certain workshops and saying yes to certain experiences. And like looking back now, I'm like, whew, I really like dodged some sketchy situations that I could have gotten myself in trouble with, but I had enough luck, which is like a big part of it, plus like intelligence and calculation to like see, okay, what's going to bring out the best in me? Like, who do I love being around certain groups or certain situations and places that is actually contributing to something beyond just me and my ego or me and my small self, right? Like what can I actually co-create? And even though being married to Kenny is a lot, it is stretching me and like forcing me to grow and be in a better version of myself or bigger picture, like future oriented, like health oriented, like how can love show up in this moment? How are we doing life together?
Sure.
Every single day, right? Like when I'm tired and I'm cranky and I haven't slept well and I'm hormonal and all the things, and life and the pressures and the demands that life pulls on both of us and pulls us in different directions. How can I still show up? And it's like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I can't sign my name next to all of my behaviors and all the things I say, because I'm not always proud of it. And it's not always the best. But ultimately what I'm learning is like, that's ordinary. That is ordinary existence. Ordinary human existence is like constantly pushing and pulling against demands from the outside world, demands from inside, what we think is going to be good and like get us closer to more resources or status or whatever it is. Like we have this internal primal instinctual barometer, right, that we're all born with, but that's just ordinary programming. And so now I'm at the place of like, oh, I'm starting to feel in my body when like hormones squirt like half a second faster than my frontal cortex can think. Like I'm starting to pay attention to like, oh shit, that's like adrenaline or cortisol, or like my heart is racing, my breath is slowing down. Like I'm noticing biological changes and shifts in how I just am compulsory, like impulse and instinct to just act and react. And I'm like, that wasn't actually me. Like I didn't think that through. Like that's just like a reaction I'm just like having, and I see that that's ordinary.
It's a reaction.
It's a See, this is why I love you. You're so good at this.
I have a fun thought experiment.
Yes.
Because we were talking about, needing to take the different medicine or having like, if you go too far in one direction. I'd be curious to kind of bring it back around to ISTA a little bit, to like characterize the work that ISTA is doing and look at it. I mean, every body of work exists somewhere, and then there's kind of an opposite on a spectrum and different things. But like, I'm curious as to like, what does it look like maybe to do too much ISTA work or to have that diminishing returns?
Yep.
What work would balance out ISTA? What kinds of people wouldn't do ISTA, but really actually fucking need it? Those are things I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's so good. I would say, we're talking about medicines. Like if you take too much medicine, it becomes poison.
Yeah.
But if you take just a little bit of poison, it could be medicinal. Right? So ISTA is not for everyone. God, no. I've never made that promise. I hope no one in ISTA made that promise. Like it's not for everyone, because nothing is for everyone, really. Like find your own medicine, find what works for you. What I got out of ISTA for myself is making peace with my body. Just making peace, like, okay, this is the body I'm born into. This is the body I live in. And just discovering and uncovering all the self-hatred I had towards my own self, my own body, right?
You mean like your physical self in that way?
Physical body.
Okay.
Physical body.
Yeah.
Physical body. So that was definitely one of the first things, is like making peace with my physical human body and feeling more comfortable in my own skin. And not pretending and not stretching and not trying to be something I'm not, right? But really like taking layers off. Like really what I got out of ISTA wasn't to learn something else. Like nothing was put on me that I learned, but it was more like unlearning BS programming and like bullshit stories, and feeling encouraged and empowered to like find my own truth, right? And it's like, I mean, some of the hardest things is like to answer is like, how are you? Or just be yourself. Like, that's a really fucking hard thing to do. It's like, what? But I've been wrestling with those two questions or statements. And I'm like, oh, I'm starting to, it's starting to become tangible. Like it's starting to like have a handle on it. Right. So I don't think ISTA's for everyone. I think it's for people who are looking for a controlled environment to experience and just play with having conversations to embody or like experience and express cathartic release, emotions, and to talk about sex or explore different sacred sexual like healing modalities or rituals. And, what we talked about earlier, right? You were saying like, I don't take myself too seriously. I don't. And I know how to hold what's sacred, right? Like how to be in a space of stillness or quiet or reverence or honor or what's sacred. And being able to have that transmission, right? Like it's a certain way of acting or being like muscle memory. It's like almost like learning how to swing a bat or like swing a golf, club. Is that what it's called? Club?
Sure. I think so. I don't know. I don't golf. Yeah.
I'm trying to use a sports metaphor without being a sports person, but something having to do with sports and like learning different skills to achieve the goal, right? Or like learn the game. Like that's to me what ISTA has provided. And learning how to like swing the bat of life, like, right? Like, for example, how to have a safer sex conversation.
Sure.
Right? Like we talk about that. We teach that at ISTA. Or like wheel of consent. Like what does consent mean? What does boundaries mean? And boundaries not just like verbal, may I, X, Y, Z, yes or no,
Sure.
like beep, boop, bop, beep, boop, robot mode versus like, okay, what does an energetic boundary feel like in my body? Like how does my body respond and react? And I need that in a group container to be with other people to like have that experience, right? But I don't think ISTA is the totality of life, like some kind of achievement award, right? Like,
well, for sure. Yeah,
it's a peak experience. And if someone's chasing that high of a peak experience, it doesn't matter if it's ISTA or psychedelics or Burning Man or some other, hallucinogenic, right? Like, or falling in love, like serial dating, right? Serial falling in love. Like I'm looking for the one, right? there's different ways where we get attached to some kind of outcome or high or experience that we're chasing. So if there's a chase for a peak experience, like ISTA, no ISTA, like that's what you're creating, is chasing that.
So what would be like what would be a good medicine for someone who's done a ton of ISTAs? I'm curious. And I'm kind of I'm not like, I don't have the answer in my mind. I'm just sort of like thinking out loud.
In a vacuum thought experiment, if someone's done too much ISTA, like
what are they probably missing in their life?
I would say what was missing for me, because I'm one of those people who did too much ISTA, right? Like I took a pause on like traveling and trainings right now. I love ISTA. I'm still very much a part of ISTA in the community and energy sense with the projects I'm doing and how I'm involved. But as far as like doing ISTA trainings, right? Like specifics, for me, it's having a house and grounding and nesting and having routine and having a schedule and not being afraid of like doing the day to day, right? Like I wake up, I have a morning routine, I go to work, I'm working, I take lunch, I have a lunch hour. Like you mentioned, meetings.
Chasing the highs. And I think that there's part of that.
It's finding the sacred in the mundane. It's finding a moment of prayer while I'm flossing and brushing my teeth.
Right.
It's going to bed in my own bed that I own, like, with my stuff, like in my house, grounded and nesting, and self-pleasuring, in my own space, like, as a practice, right? Like, so it's like taking some of these, teachings or tools or ways of being and actually just like applying it, right? There's a reason why they cut all of the quote unquote mundane out of movies and TV shows, right? Because it's kind of like boring. It's not the like high climax or whatever that adds to the story. So to me, that has been really supportive for my feeling more integrated and centered, instead of chasing these peak experiences, which I did. I was a workshop junkie, right? For 10 years I did that. And I'm like, okay, actually, I just want to like live and be in it.
And I think conversely, what I've seen, not having done ISTA, but having a lot of friends and watch people go through it, like a classic person who really benefits from ISTA is like someone who's like newly divorced, right? And it's because they're doing the opposite of what you were saying. They're going from a very structured, mundane, but also beautiful like thing, and they're just exploding their life open. That's interesting. I mean, again, it's everything's just on that spectrum of